Hi, my name is John Brady, and I'm very pleased that White Sewing Machine Company has asked Modern Sewing Productions to present this introductory video on your new White Speedy Lock serger. You know, with today's busy lifestyle, it can be hard to find time to sew. But with your new White Speedy Lock serger, you'll be able to get more durable, professional results in a fraction of the time that it takes with a regular sewing machine.
Making beautiful quilts and wearable art has never been easier. You'll find that the rolled edge feature is invaluable for finishing the raw edges on all your craft projects. And just look at the beautiful decorative edges you can achieve with yarn or pearl cotton in the loopers instead of thread. The Speedy Lock is so fast you may even find time to sew matching outfits for your children and their dolls. And believe it or not, the beautiful full gathers were also done on the Speedy Lock. The full look on the bottom of this dress was achieved by inserting fishing line into the rolled edge. Again, all the gathering and rolled edges were achieved on the serger, including the parallel rows of stretched rolled edges at the bottom of this dress that we call a lettuce edge. With the optional blind hem, elastic, and piping attachments, you'll be able to achieve invisible yet incredibly durable blind hems. You'll get perfect results inserting and stretching elastic hands-free, and you'll be able to make and insert your own piping for a beautiful edge like this. The secret to unlocking the potential of your new Speedy Lock serger is in understanding the tensions. While I'm sure many of you were taught to never touch the tensions on your sewing machine, that is how you're going to achieve all of these beautiful effects on your new Speedy Lock serger. And that is this tape's #1 goal. I want you to have as much confidence in your new Speedy Lock serger as you do in your sewing machine. So let's start with the different types of threads you can use.
The White Speedy Lock serger can use any type of cone or regular size spool of thread available today. For example, here we have a couple different sizes of regular thread. Here's a metallic thread, which you can do some beautiful work with some of these specialty threads. Also, we have the woolly nylon here, which is fantastic for things like swimwear, leotards, or especially on the rolled edge. It really makes that look nice. Now, we've also got the regular size spools of thread here. And like I say, you can use any of these you want on the Speedy Lock serger. The only thing you have to know is which adapter to use with which spool or cone. Okay, let's start with the cone threads, which are specially designed for the household sergers. Now you'll notice with this cone here, if I place it on without any adapter, it tends to come off at an angle, and that is going to cause you problems with your tensions. So what you want to do if you're using a cone is to use this adapter here. Now with this size cone, if I push that all the way down, it fits nice and snug on there and stands upright. But if I go to a different size cone, some of them have a little wider opening at the bottom. This one, even with the adapter on, tends to come off at an angle. But I find that if I take this adapter and put it up to where it goes into the narrower part of the cone, then it holds nice and steady just fine. Now you also may find with some types of cone thread, they can be slippery, like if you're using a pearl cotton or something like that, and the thread will sometimes slip down underneath and catch. And in those cases, you have a little bit of this net supplied with the machine. And if you put that net over the cone and then have your thread coming up through there, that will keep it from falling down. Now, let's go to a regular size spool of thread. Now, the problem here is not having the thread sit upright. It obviously will do that as it fits on the spindle there. But as the thread's coming off, you can see how that's catching around the rough edge of the spool. And again, that's going to seem like a tension problem. So with a regular spool of thread, you use your flat adapter, put that on top after you have the spool on, and now the thread will run around the smooth edge of the adapter rather than the rough edge of the spool. So now you know how to use any type of spool or cone on your new Speedy Lock serger. Okay, now we're ready to thread the machine from start to finish. And I think you're going to find this is a lot easier than you might have thought before. The first thing you're going to do is pull your thread stand all the way up, and then place your spools of thread on. Now, these spools I'm using actually don't need an adapter. They don't have a rough edge at the top, so I don't have to worry about that, and I can just set them right on back there. Now, you'll also notice that I've matched the colors of thread to the color coding on your machine here. And this is really a good way for you to learn how to use the machine. It can be a little confusing, whereas you haven't used a serger before, as to which thread is actually going where. So by having the 4 different colors of thread on, it makes it a lot easier to see. Now, to begin threading, you're going to want to open up both the doors on the machine. Now, the front door simply pushes to the right and then drops straight down. The side door simply pushes to the left. And then we start with the upper looper or the blue thread. Now, when you start, all you're going to do is come straight up into the top. Then you want to catch right behind here, and then in between the tension. And on a serger, you do want to make sure that you actually pull the thread into the tension. On a regular machine, when you lift the presser foot, the tensions release. On a serger, they don't. So make sure you hold from above the thread and below and feel it actually go between the two discs. Then you simply follow the path here, here, and then I'm following the blue dots here, blue there, and blue there. And then the next step is through the upper looper. Now the loopers on the machine are what actually form the overcasting stitches. You have a lower looper, which is right here, travels back and forth like that, and then your upper looper is right up here, and it goes up and down. It goes up and catches the needle threads and then comes back down again. Now to make it easier to thread, they make it so that the blade actually pushes to the left and you can swing out of the way. Then I'm going to turn the wheel until I have a good shot at the upper looper there, and then we go straight through the hole in the tip of the upper looper. Now you'll find in your attachment kit that there is a very good set of tweezers, and especially when you first do this, you'll find this is quite handy to have. So I go from behind, grab that upper looper thread, and you may have noticed that I had one of my other threads come out as I did that. That will happen to you sometimes, so double check and make sure that nothing came out when you thread it the first time. So we'll click that back into there, and now we have the whole upper looper threaded. Now you can also double check it on your chart down here. You notice again they've color coded it and they have the whole threading diagram right on the inside of the machine. Okay, now we go to the lower looper, which is the pink path. Again, start out up in the top, come behind here. Again, make sure from above and below that you hold the thread and pull it into the tensions. Back into here, starts out exactly the same. You'll notice here there's a pink and a blue dot on this guide. That's because both threads go into there. So right along with the blue thread, and then our next pink one's here, and then we're going to do the lower looper. Now there is a hook beneath the lower looper. You will see a hook there. And to get that, the easiest thing I found is to pass the thread through there, and then hook it up into that hook. And then there's a hook beneath the lower looper, and I'm going to hook it in there, and then with my tweezers I'm going to grab that thread, pull it back through to the right side. Then I'm going to turn the wheel towards me until the tip of the lower looper is barely above the upper looper. It's a little shortcut. What that allows me to do, clip myself a fresh end there, it allows me to thread through the tip of the lower looper. I'll thread it back as far as it'll go, and then by turning the wheel, the upper looper then pulls that lower looper thread up for me. And we'll grab that with the tweezers, and again, make sure you're not tangling on anything as you do that. And then take that thread to the back. And then I'm going to lift the presser foot, which your presser foot lifter is right here on the side of the machine. Lift that up and take the threads under the foot and to the left, and then we're done threading the loopers. And I can now shut that door and drop the foot back down. Now we're going to thread the needles. We'll start with the right needle or the inside needle, which is the green path. And again, they all start out exactly the same, coming up to the top of the thread pole, down into there, same guide here for all four. Again, I always make sure I pull that into the tension disc, and I go under here, and then I'm going to follow this gray path here. So I go into the first groove there, into the first groove there on that side, and then you've got a guide above the needle, where if you just go straight back and loop it around, you'll get that into there, and then you're ready to thread the needle. Now, one thing that may help, in fact, you could do this from the very start. I find myself not doing this so much anymore, but I know when I first started it, I found it a little easier to go ahead and take the presser foot off. And you notice that if I push down on that, I have a double lift, so I can get that up high enough. Okay, so now that we've got the foot out of the way, let's see how good of a shot I am at hitting the eye of the needle there. There we go, not too bad. And now the yellow one, or the left needle. Again, starts exactly the same, up into the top, behind there, always pull it into the tension disc, And then this one, you'll notice they have a gray path for it to follow. So it goes into the upper guides on both of these, and then it goes on this side of our little hook there, and then it has its own little guide right above the needle. And then we'll thread the left needle and we'll be done with the threading. So as you can see, it's really not that difficult to thread, although the next thing I'm going to show you is a shortcut for threading the whole machine if you don't feel like going through that whole process. Now just to finish this up though, we'll put the foot back on. And again, you notice how I come in at kind of an angle there, and I push up so that I have that double lift on the foot. And then make sure it's seated all the way down. Tighten your foot up. And all the threads now should be, there we go, under the foot and to the left. Drop the foot down, and then I always take a couple stitches by hand. Just in case I didn't do anything right, I'd rather do it by hand than pushing on the foot control. And now you can see the stitches are forming. Oh, and by the way, be sure you always put your blade back. Notice how it goes up and rotates out of the way? And make sure you put it back and close all the doors before you start to sew. That's very important. You don't want your fabric to go in between those loopers or anything. So the blade is down, we're ready to sew. But now, like I promised you, I'm going to show you a shortcut on how to do the threading here. I think you'll like this. What I'm going to do, this is called tying on and pulling through. And what I do, instead of threading the entire machine, if I want to change colors on something, and I'm going to change all 4 colors, rather than rethread the whole machine, I simply take my 2 needle threads and clip them right above the eye of the needle. And then you noticed I pulled a little bit of slack there. Then lift the foot, and I should be able to pull those other threads, which are now just the 2 looper threads left. Then I clip the threads in the back, and I want to leave myself a little bit there so I can tie the new ones on. And then, now I'm not going to change threads. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just switch colors here just to show you that this really works. We'll switch the 2 colors here. And I'm now tying the pink thread to the blue thread. And I find just a simple overhand knot works. So we make a loop and come right back through. I don't really worry too much about leaving a tail on there. That never seems to cause me a problem. So I just make it as easy as possible and tie myself a big overhand knot. And we'll do the same thing, tying the blue thread to the pink thread. And again, it's a simple overhand knot right back through the middle. And now, and we'll get into tensions a little bit later. I'm going to show you how to set those. But right now I'm going to take and turn them to 0. One of the nice things on this machine is the tensions stop on 0. They go up to 9 and stop again. So you really can't get lost as long as you know what number to go back to, which again we'll get to a little bit later. But now you can see that I'm pulling both those looper threads. And let's see. Whoops, I got my thread caught a little bit underneath there. There we go. Got to be careful. Those little tangles will always get you. Make sure nothing's tangled, and there they go, right through the tensions. And now you can see the colors are reversed. Now the blue is through the pink is through the blue. So you could obviously change your colors that way. Now I also can do that with the needles. You notice that I did clip the thread above the eye of the needle. The one thing I don't want to do is try to pull that knot through the eye of the needle. I think that most times would tend to bend your needle. And then you could have a chance on a bent needle coming down and hitting a looper or something like that. So I'm not going to be pulling the knots through the eye of the needle. And I know it would be nice if we could do that whole thing, but at least this way you can thread the whole machine to a new color by tying on and pulling through, and the only thing that you have to do is thread the 2 needles at the end, and then you've got the machine threaded. There, I've got my knots tied, and 0 the tensions, and it just slips right on through. Rethread the needles, and you're ready to sew again. Okay, now we have the machine all threaded up when we're ready to start sewing. But now comes the scary part to a lot of you, and that's getting the tensions set correctly. Now, actually, setting the tensions on the serger, once you understand how they work and which thread goes where, and like I said in the beginning, if you'll thread it up the same as I have with colors that match the coloring path and the coloring coding on the tension, it'll be a lot easier to see which one goes where. You'll find that it's very simple to operate the tensions on the machine. And you'll also find that in the long run, if you take the time now to listen carefully and understand how the tensions work, that you're going to get a lot more out of the machine. Now, one of the first rules of setting the tensions on the serger is the looser they can be, and yet you still want a good quality seam, the looser they can be, the better. So what we want to do is we want to start with the tensions loose and then slowly tighten them up until we get a good looking stitch. So what I'm going to have you do is take the yellow tension and turn it down to 2. That's your left needle. Your right needle or green to 2. The upper looper or blue we're going to put all the way down to 1. And also your lower looper, or the pink one, all the way down to 1. So I know that these are extremely loose tensions and they won't give you a good seam. But again, we want to start with them loose and then slowly tighten up until we have a good stitch. So go ahead and run a medium weight piece of fabric through at those tension settings. Now on my sample, and I'm sure it's this way on yours too, the needle threads are very loose. There's all sorts of loops here, and it's a little bit hard to tell exactly what's going on. So what I've done here to make it easier for you to see what the stitch should look like is I've made a giant stitch. And I've used the same color coding, the yellow for the green for the inside needle, blue for the upper looper, and the pink for the lower looper. Now what you want to look for in a good stitch, and this would be the top side, as you run the fabric through the machine, this is what you're going to see coming out the back. You should see 2 straight lines for the green and yellow thread, and then the blue thread should come up and make a loop on the top with your pink thread. So there should be a fairly straight line with the 2 looper threads meeting at the top. Then on the back side, what you see on the bottom of the stitch are little yellow and green dots here. Those again are your 2 straight stitches coming up and wrapping around the lower looper thread. And again, the looper thread comes up, meets with the blue thread right at the top edge of the fabric. Now, what you don't want to happen is for the thread to be so tight that these dots disappear and actually pull down inside of the fabric. You can see if I can get a good one here for you. Now what I'm doing is I'm pulling on the back side. I'm actually pulling the straight stitch too tight. So you see here that where there was a dot, see how I'm pulling that into the fabric? Okay, you don't want to do that. You want to see those dots up on top of the fabric like you are here. If they're pulled down in too tight, you're going to have problems with fabrics puckering. You may have thread breakage, that type of thing. So this is what you want to see. Now, we'll go back to the regular sample and we'll take a look at that one again. Okay, now we're looking at the sample that I just ran through with my tension set at the loose settings. And looking at the bottom side of the fabric, instead of the little dots that I was just talking about, instead I've got big loops of green and yellow thread. So obviously those needle tensions are too loose. And now we'll take a look at the giant stitch that I made, and you'll be able to see it even more clearly there. Okay, now you can see on my giant stitch here exactly what I'm talking about. The yellow and the green are forming big loops here. And again, what we want to see, if you can see on this one right here, is we want that to come down and just form a knot right on top of the fabric. So what we're going to do is go back to the machine now and tighten the tensions up a little bit. Okay, so let's take our needle tensions and tighten them up a little bit and get those loops to disappear. Now those were pretty big loops on there, so I would imagine I'm going to have to go up a couple numbers on both of them. So we'll take them both up to 4 and we'll run our fabric through again. And as you run the fabric through, I should have mentioned this the first time, but you'll notice that I didn't go to lift up the presser bar like you normally would on your sewing machine. What I do is I just get the fabric right up to the foot and lift the front of the foot with my thumb, slip the fabric under a little bit, and away we go. You will find, like if you're matching stripes on fabric, the serger will match it perfectly even all the way down, as long as they start even, and as long as you do that little trick. Lift the front of the foot up, slip the fabric under, and you're ready to go. Now we'll run it through and see what that looks like. Okay, you'll also notice how I just swung the tail of thread around and let the machine cut it off. As long as you don't pull, that's fine to do it that way. Okay, now I've still got some loop on the yellow. The green one looks pretty good. I see little dots there, but a little bit of loop on the yellow. So I'm going to take my yellow tension up just a little bit, leave the green there, and we'll run it through again. Okay, that's still just a little bit loopy on the yellow, so we'll try a little bit more tension there. Green one again looks just fine right now. Okay, now we're starting to get the yellow dots, and now my lower looper just a little bit, loops hanging out there, so we'll tighten that one up a little bit, and it looks like I go a little tighter here. We'll put those at about 2. Okay, now we're zeroing in on a good tension. And this is what you're going to do. Again, the looser the tension can be, the better. The bottom line is, if you know what the stitch is supposed to look like, just tighten. If you have a little bit of a dot on either of your needle threads, your green or your yellow thread have a little bit of a loop there, tighten them up a little bit until you get a dot instead of a loop. And then on the 2 looper threads, if your blue thread or the upper looper is hanging over to one side, tighten it up a little bit to pull it back to the top. Same thing with the pink one. But always start from the loosest tension settings first and slowly tighten up until you have a good stitch. Okay, now let's take a look at the width and the length adjustments on your new Speedy Lock. Now in order to adjust them, you're going to want to open up the side cover on the machine. And again, that just pushes out to the right. And then this is your length adjustment. And this is the length of the stitch. Same as on your sewing machine, it just makes the feed dogs travel further. And by pushing the lever up, I get a longer length, all the way up to 5. Push the lever down, and you can go all the way down to 1 for the shortest length, which you'll use for things like your rolled edge. Now, you will find that as you go into thicker and thicker fabrics, you're going to want to use a longer length. So, for example, if you're doing like some polar fleece or several layers of denim, you'll find that a longer length will be better. On some of your stretchier fabrics, like Lycra, you'll want to go to a shorter length. Now, your width adjustment is right here. And simply by turning this knob, you can see this little dial right here moving back and forth down to a shortest width of 4, and then going back the other way up to 5 and 6. So you have anywhere between 6 and 4 you can adjust the width on the machine. Now the reason you would do that is, for example, if I'm doing a fabric that is really loosely woven and will fray very easily, I'm going to want my widest width. And I think that would include things like denim. If I were making a pair of jeans, I would want my widest width on the stitch. And then for something that you want a little bit less bulk in the seam, a lot of your knits aren't going to unravel real easily, I would probably do a t-shirt down at the 4, because you're going to have less seam in there, and yet because of the nature of the knit material, you're not going to have to worry about anything coming apart. So there's your length and width adjustment. Length here, width here, and you'll be able to handle any type, weight, any thickness of fabric using those 2 adjustments. You know, one of the great things about the serger is the way that it trims off the edge before it sews. That's why you get such a nice finished look to it. The threads wrap right around the edge. But the only problem is that the cutter in there, as it's trimming the fabric away, it kind of drops it off in front of the machine there, which can get kind of messy. So White Sewing Machine Company was nice enough to put a scrap catcher right with the Speedy Lock. And all you do is put that right into the machine like that, and it clicks in. All your scraps fall into the tray. Then when it's full, simply take the tray up, dump it into the trash, and you're ready to go again. Okay, to make the machine do a rolled edge, there's a couple things you need to do. First, let's open up the doors here. And you'll notice on the regular plate, the plate that comes in your machine, there's an A on the front of it. On your rolled edge plate, there's a B right on the front of the plate there, so that way you should never get them confused. And what we're going to do is take this foot off. And again, I like to just use the double lift of the presser lifter there. Just push it down and it'll lift up high enough to take that foot off. And then you're going to remove the left needle, or the one that the yellow thread goes to. So I'm going to clip that thread. In the kit, you've got a small screwdriver. Loosen the needle set screw, and I'll just make sure the other one stays in there. We'll drop that needle out and tighten that back down. And when you do need to change needles, remember, flat side goes to the back, and push them all the way up as high as they'll go. So when you're changing needles, make sure that you keep that one pushed up as high as it'll go. Then remove these 2 screws. And again, both of these screwdrivers are found in your attachment kit, so you don't have to worry about that. Except, of course, the kids will borrow them to fix their roller skates, but you'll just have to hide them good to avoid that. Okay. And then we take this plate off, and I just kind of hold on to those tails of thread so I don't get that tangled up. Just as soon not have to rethread anything, but just want to change the plates here. And we'll put the new plate on. And again, I make sure I don't pinch any of the threads under the plate. And put these screws back in. And we'll be ready to do a rolled edge. Now, one of the best ways to do a rolled edge is with what we call the woolly nylon or the super stretch nylon in your loopers. You can put it either just in the upper looper or in both loopers. And because of the texture of the thread, it makes a beautiful soft rolled edge, and it fills in the space a lot better also. Okay, now we've got the rolled edge or the B plate on, and now I'm going to go to also the B foot, which is the rolled edge foot. And again, they're marked the same as the plate. So I'm going to use that double lift on the pressure bar lift, get the threads under the foot, tighten it down, make sure it's seated all the way down. And now we're ready to do a rolled edge. Now I'm doing one with just regular thread here, but again, you'll love it with the super stretch or woolly nylon. Okay, now you'll find that the rolled edge looks good on a lot of different fabrics. One place you'll see it a lot is like on a tricot where you want to finish the raw edge. And first of all, we're just going to start by running it through without changing anything. And then we'll talk about different lengths and widths that you can use for this. That thread out of the way. Okay, so there's the rolled edge. Now I'm going to open up the door. I'm going to shorten the length all the way down. Most of the time when you do a rolled edge, you're going to have your length all the way down to 1. Now you can have the width on different settings. I've got it on the widest width right now, but you can set that anywhere you want, and you'll just get different looks to it. Okay, now the other thing you're going to do almost all the time on a rolled edge is tighten your lower looper about all the way up. I'm going to go ahead and turn mine to 9, and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, now here, as you can see, this is where I first started without making any changes. The stitch length is too long. I shortened the stitch length down, coming in over here, and I still have those loops hanging out. Then I tightened the lower looper up, which you can see the pink threads are what's hanging out back here. And now that rolls the fabric over, makes a nice smooth edge, and you've got a beautiful rolled edge. The last thing I'm going to show you on the instructional video here is how to keep the machine clean. Now it's pretty obvious that you've got the blades trimming and the needles going, and you've got all that seam production happening at one time. So there's bound to be a little lint that gets in there that doesn't fall down into the scrap catcher. So simply take your lint brush out of the attachment kit that comes with the machine, and you can simply go in here and brush any lint you see away. Open up both doors, and you'll find a little bit out there. You might want to lift the blade up to get that cleaned out. And then every once in a while, or if you do the rolled hem occasionally, brush out underneath the plate around the feed dogs. You will get some lint buildup around there also. And I also wanted to let you know that your machine also comes with a vinyl cover that goes over the top, and if you're going to carry it someplace, this just pushes down. And the cover that comes with the machine goes over the top, and then you can reach right through that cover down here for the handle. And that way you can carry the machine with you everywhere you go. Well, thank you for watching the introductory video on the White Speedy Lock by Modern Sewing Productions. I hope that this has helped to inspire you to create new things with your serger. And most of all, I hope that it's helped you understand the tensions on the machine, because I really believe that once you understand how the tensions on a serger work, it becomes a very simple machine to use. So thanks again for viewing, and look for more videos coming soon from Modern Sewing Productions on the White Speedy Lock serger.